Because every day in the morning you will have enough energy to go and conquer the world. If you are doing it for money, probably chances are for next 3 years or 5 years you may or may not see the money. And then you'll get tired. And once you get tired, the energy goes out. And once the energy goes out, things start lagging. And then gradually it's a downward spiral. And again, there are no rights and wrongs. These are all my personal opinions. It may apply to some of you. It may not apply to any of you. There are cases when within 9 months of a company being started, the acquisition happens for $50 million, $100 million, and all of that. Those are probably the exceptions to the rule if somebody has a very bright idea. Not necessarily that's a rule. So if you are 100% sure that this is a brilliant idea and somebody is going to come and acquire me in 12 months, do it for money. There is nothing wrong in it. Whatever works. But by and large, doing it for money, and if it stretches beyond a few years, you will have a struggle on your hand. I tell people about the five, those of you who have studied MBAs, that there is a 5 P's of the product for the last 30 years. I kind of advise the young Turks on the 5 P's of the entrepreneurship. The first is the passion that I talked about. The second is people. The initial team that you form is very, very critical. It's very hard to do the things on my own. And trust me and believe me, I've done that. I know. It's so tough. Because you are just you. You're looking after everything, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's engineering, production, inventory, finance. Not scalable model. Becomes very difficult. So you have to have a team, and that team has to work together. The team is the one which wins the game at the end of the day, not an individual. And nothing personifies that better than the cricket team. If you really look at the cricket team, the teams which hang together, which have a very tight team play, they are the winners. A while ago, a couple of decades ago, there was this concept of West Indies versus rest of the world, or India versus rest of the world, if anybody remembers. If you look at the record and the data, rest of the world never won. And it would have the best of the batsmen and the best of the bowlers. It will have the Brian Lara and Vivian Richards and this guy and that guy and whatnot. And that's because of the teamwork. And teamwork requires a lot of give and take. Because as soon as you put 2 people together, there are going to be 2 brains, and just like I said in the beginning, if there are 6 billion people in the world, no 2 people are going to think alike. And when they don't think alike, there are going to be opinions. And when there are opinions, there are going to be differences of opinions. And that's why most of the partnerships don't survive. So when you get your team together, you have to make sure that all of you play the ball together. That's very, very critical. So that's the second P, people, right? Third is going to be the persistence. Some of you will be lucky enough that within 6 months, within 1 year, within 2 years, you get bought out by some phenomenal sum. But even for you, even if you get bought out by $50 million, that you will life after that acquisition. We think that once $50 million happened, happiness will follow. But Git Sethi, everybody knows Git Sethi, has written a book which clearly differentiates between the happiness and success. Success is not necessarily happiness. But that's a different topic. We will not get into that. The fourth is patience. Along with perseverance and persistence, you have to be patient if you want to nurture your idea on a long-term basis. This advice is for average entrepreneur who is not going to be hitting the 4s and 6s and doing the $100 million acquisition within the first 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, and has to survive for 5 years or 7 years. Correct? And when you get to a certain size, I think starting putting the processes in place is going to be very, very important also, whether you're a product company or a service company. Very important. So those are the 5 P's, and those are the 5 ideas that I talked about. If I summarize very quickly, do it for passion, number 1. Decide whether you want to be a big fish in small pond or a small fish in a big pond, number 2. Number three, identify your customer early on. Number four, I didn't talk about. A lot of times we get wedded to our ideas and we don't listen to the marketplace. We provide the product designs to a lot of companies. We have provide a lot of product design service to a lot of startups in software as well as the electronic hardware. I haven't seen a product which comes out as per the early spec. All of them change by more than 50% or 80% by the time they become introduced in the marketplace. Because that's the nature of the beast. And the reason it happens is because you thought of an idea and you think this is how it's going to work and this is why it should appeal to the people. You take it to the market or your potential customers, they'll give you feedback because their way of looking at it will be different than your way of looking at it. You go to 5 customers or 5 potential customers, they'll have 5 different feedback. And then, if you're smart, you'll incorporate that. And by the time this happens over a period of 1 year, a lot of things would have changed. And that's why the products typically end up changing by 50-60% before they hit the marketplace. And that's why it's important not to be stubborn about what you think is right or wrong, but listen to the customer and listen to what he needs. Because at the end of the day, he's the one who's going to buy the product. And again, these are my opinions. You know, once in a while you're going to have Steve Jobs, who doesn't need any market research, who doesn't need any customer, goes out to the consumer market and hits the home runs day in and day out. But how many of them are there in the world? And then you decide when you do the SWOT analysis whether you're Steve Jobs or not. Maybe you are a Steve Jobs, and maybe you can hit that, and then you should follow that, which is perfectly okay, and that's what you should do. But you should be very sure that you are that material. I think that's very important in the SWOT analysis that I talked about upfront. And the last one, like a typical Ahmedabadi, be frugal in early stages. Finance is the blood of any company. No money, no survival. So you got to be frugal in the early days. That's very, very important to survive. If you can stretch your dollar, if you can stretch your money from 1 month to 2 months or 1 year to 18 months, nothing like it. Cut corners, whatever it takes. That's what I did in the early days of this company. Very, very frugal. We still are very frugal. I get a lot of flake from my people. We are about 1,400 engineers now. I can buy BMW and Audi and all of that. I still drive City Honda, and a lot of people have a problem with that, including my wife, including my people who report into me because they are buying City Honda, right? And they have a problem with their bosses also driving City Honda. But then you have to be comfortable in your skin. You got to do what's right for you. So above all, remember that. Do what is right for you in spite of all the suggestions I have given you. Alright? Okay, so I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yes, there would be, I'm sure. So, questions from the audience, please. Any questions?
Initial phase.
Excellent question. So, I think where you're an entrepreneur, and that ties into the passion that I talked about. You have to be passionate about your idea, right? And in early days, you're going to be a sales guy. You're the only sales guy for a company. And when I talk about sales guy, it's not necessarily selling to your customer, but it's selling to the angel investors, selling to the VCs, selling to the employees, potential employees, and all of that. And that passion has to come out in your trying to convince the potential candidate who is going to be your first guy, right? That's very important. And that shows up how you talk, what you talk, how passionate you are, and whether your idea has validity or not also, right? And you also have to treat him as your, in a certain sense, your partner, your teammate, your team player. That's very important. He has to feel very comfortable, very inspired, and very confident that this idea is going to go somewhere and I'm going to make money. And you also have to be ready to part with some of the equity, in my opinion, at least in the software field.
Thank you.
Any questions?
just by the way, in InfoChips, about 20% of the equity is held by the people, which is a high number, not a small number.
What makes you choose so difficult field? I mean, hardware with the lowest infrastructure in India.
So my wife says that I am a real idiot. And I like to do the things the most difficult way. So the question is, why did I choose to do what we are doing? Product design services in semiconductor, chip design, product design, firmware, and all of that. Honestly, if you think about it, the more difficult the challenges are, the more satisfaction you get if you are successful. Right? Climbing Abu, vis-a-vis climbing Mount Everest, there is a sense of achievement is different. So that's one. Second, I talked about passion early on, right? So the reason I came back from USA and relocated in India back in 80s and early 90s is not because I wanted to make money. Because my dream was to do something, and everybody talks about it. Everybody goes to USA, at least on those days, always talked about coming back because our emotional roots are here, our ties are here. People miss India. And they always talk about only 1%, 2% in those days came back, right? Because life is not exactly a bed of roses out here. So, in a certain sense, my personal experience kind of relates to the movie Swadesh. That you want to go back and you want to do something. And it was my dream that I go back to Ahmedabad where there is nothing and create something, sort of an ecosystem, right? You kind of start developing, building people, developing competencies, this, that, and other stuff. By God's grace, I think some of it modestly has been successful and come to pass. We probably have about 12 different startups from eInfochips. We go and give lectures to probably 15 or 20 different engineering colleges. We have a non-profit organization called ITRA, eInfochips Training and Research Academy. So things are happening by God's grace. And if anything, every year we take about 200 fresh graduates, and over a period of 10 years, there are probably 3,000 or 4,000 careers that have been built. That gives us immense sense of satisfaction, apart from money side. So this is my personal philosophy, that apart from money, there is a lot more in life, and that sense of achievement, that sense of fulfillment, what drives you towards success at the end of the day. So that's a long answer. The short answer is that I was passionate about starting something in Ahmedabad because Ahmedabad didn't have it, and that's what drove me to start a company and take on the difficult challenges. Yes.
Sir, one of the points that you focused on was teamwork. So, was there any of your closed one with you in building your business?
Yeah, so there are, after 20, so we just completed 20 years this year. We still have some people from 20 years ago. Not easy, right? And it has to do with the team chemistry, as I said. And it's hard to retain team. In IT industry, software industry, electronic design, so difficult because there are greener pastures and people are going to take and all of that. So attrition rate in Bangalore is, for example, common in IT services. I'm talking about the services industry. It's very common to be around 18%, 20%. And people will report 15%. If you read, by the way, this data is public. If you go to Infosys, Wipro, HCL, TCS, you'll see the attrition rate. And they all get massaged also because there are terms and conditions apply, right? But if you look at the brutal numbers, probably they're going to be 18, 20, 25%. All these ones. We are doing it around 12. In the best times, we do about 8%. In the average time, we do about 12%. But that has to be the main focus, retaining the team. Yeah.
Well, as you said, 5 P's. Second was people. So that's how we build the system. That's how we build the company. So initially, there are people who are with us and started on the top time. So as we grow, comes the third or fourth P, the process.
Yes.
So while setting up the process, there is a conflict of interest in where the people are treated. There's a trade-off between process and people-oriented approach.
Correct.
how to deal with that, especially in that area, or to be given priority to any of them.
So you deal with it with great difficulty. There are no easy answers to the question, plus it's going to vary from company to company, person to person and all of that. Luckily, because of the internet and intranet and web and all the tools, probably life is so much simplified that everything gets done electronically these days. I won't worry about the processes till I start making revenue and being profitable. I think that's a rough thumb rule, that once you are profitable, once the markets look good, and once you know that I'm going to not only survive, but I'm going to flourish, right? That's a good time. Typically when you start hitting 60, 70, 100 people, there's a few crores in revenue, maybe you can start thinking about putting the processes in place. Again, thumb rule, it will vary a lot depending on what you're doing and all of that. Yeah.
So what's your dream like?
What's my dream?
I'm a big fan of eInfochips because it's a Gujarat-based company, InfoChip, and it's globally recognized because it's the first of its kind company which chip designing. So chip designing is a part which is very tough in the sense.
So I don't know about global recognition and all of that. Thank you very much for the compliments. But I consider we still are a very small company. We're not big. There are much bigger companies. But what's the question?
The employees working in your company or they are so much capable to work in Intel and all the things. So why not to have that model in India?
So if I may rephrase the question, you're saying why not design your own chips?
Yes.
Why not design the products? Why do the servicing?
Yes.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Go out and design the chips like Intel.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I got the product.
Not you. When the India will make their complete own IC?
Well, that's a different question. But am I understanding your question correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got the question right. So, and I'll answer not only for the chip but for the product also, because whatever applies to chip also applies to surveillance cameras and applies to the telepresence equipment or whatever product you take, right? Now, there is a big difference between if you look at the product and if you look at any successful company which is in $50 or $100 million range, the engineering will be only 10 to 15% of the budget. If you're a startup, maybe 30%. But then there's a whole choo-choo train that happens about branding, promotion, market positioning, all of that, PR, giving out the ads and this and that you see in the Flipkart, for example, right? TV ads, huge amount of spend on that. After marketing, there is also the sales function. You have to worry about the distributors, you have to worry about the retailers, you have to worry about the channel and all of that. Then if you have a real product, then you have to worry about the manufacturing, you have to worry about the inventory, you have to worry about the cash flows. So when you talk about doing a product, engineering is only 10 or 20% of the problem. 80% of the problem is all this other stuff. And you have to figure that out before you go out and put the product in the marketplace. Otherwise you're going to get creamed. Correct?
Yeah.
And your competency not necessarily is engineering. Your competency might be marketing.
Yes.
Your competency might be sales. It can be engineering also. I'm not saying no. But there are other factors which get involved in being successful in not only designing product, promoting product, and more importantly selling the product. Now when I do my SWOT, I know that I'm not good at marketing. We are not very good at marketing ourselves. We are not very good at positioning ourselves in the marketplace. Our strength is engineering. So we are leveraging that and staying in services.
So staying in
Sure, you
focus is the
have a
main
lot
thing.
of questions and you would like to continue talking to the speaker, but our next speaker is here, and we would rather won't delay you for lunch, and he also has an engagement to cater to. But I have a suggestion. One or two people whose question have been unanswered, why don't you rather accompany our speaker till the door, and that way you get to talk to him personally. that would be a good thing. But before you go, may I request Sarthak, our TAM member, to come and present a token of appreciation. Sorry. We have to be doing so pictures are so very important.